Well, getting leadership right is not very easy at all, mainly because it requires something that people who are in leadership have trouble with, and that's repressing their own ego. To be a good leader, I think you absolutely need to see yourself as doing this as a service. Leadership is not something you get into to get a bigger office, have a bigger salary, get a parking spot, that sort of thing, or to have people call you sir or what have you. If that's your reason for going into leadership, you're really going into it for the wrong reasons, in my opinion. So, no, it's pretty easy to understand, I think, what the qualities are for a good leader. But doing it is a whole lot more of a challenge because you have to sacrifice yourself for the organization to grow, for the people to improve, for you to really get leadership right. You can't come first. You've got to be able to do things to get your organization and the people in your organization, your teammates, to grow and to do better and become the leaders really that they themselves can become. There are many qualities required for good leadership, of course. I would say the top three qualities to make an exceptional leader really are starting off with honesty. I would say honesty, sweat, and humility. So let's talk about honesty for a second. Honesty means what it says, but honesty is very hard to do, kind of like Billy Joel said in his song. Very hard to come by because honesty is difficult. Honesty is difficult because it means saying and doing things that some people may not like. At the end of the day, people in any organization can do very well with decisions that are made, even if it's a decision that they themselves may not care for, if they were part of the communication. That is to say, people that are affected by a decision need to be part of the conversation that leads to the decision whenever possible. And then being honest all along the way. Doing the right thing is hard because that's really what honesty is having a moral compass, being very clear with what that is, and then doing the right thing every time. Much harder to do than it sounds. Sweat is just what it sounds like. Sweat comes from hard work. You can't fake sweat. It means no shortcuts. Sweat means doing the work of the work. Because a lot of people are very good at delegating. And in fact, they make their entire career out of asking or telling other people what to do. And then they themselves are quick to kind of stand there and feel good about the decisions that were made that led to these wonderful things when in fact they didn't even break a sweat to get to those decisions. So sweat is important because people, especially people in your organization, know the truth. They can tell when leadership is faking it. And when they're not, when they're in there rolling up their sleeves and working hard like everybody else, doing their job to their best, working and putting in the time, that counts. The third one is humility. I mean, the truth is you need to be humble in this job. And humility basically takes the form of recognizing you don't know everything. There are some leaders that are deathly afraid of letting people know that they don't know something. So they pretend. And in an organization, people quickly know whether you're faking that too. They can tell whether you really don't know something and whether you're pretending you know something. And that is way worse than simply saying, I don't know. That's why I need your help. So it does require humility, which means you ask for help on occasion. It also requires surrounding yourself with people that know more than you do. A good leader hires people that are smarter than he or she is. So you've got to understand that getting people on your team that you can develop leadership and trust in, where your humility, which means you take second and third place so that they can take first, is really important. It's never a problem to give the credit to other people. It is a problem when other people do the work and you take credit for that. So you want to do the opposite. Humility, I would say, is simply making sure you've got people on your team that are better than you. Well, in reality, it really isn't creating leadership, it is discovering it. I use the term created or creating lasting leadership as opposed to discovering because I think most people see discovery as kind of stumbling into something. I'd use the word discover if I felt that everybody used it the way I do, which means you seek it out. It is purposeful. You don't just stumble upon something. You make a point of looking for the qualities that are desirable for your organization and everybody that works there. I believe that, and I think all good leaders should believe, is that everyone in your organization is really a leader or has a leader within themselves because they all contribute. So you have to see and ask yourself, what are the qualities that you know they use or they bring to the table that are for the betterment of the organization and are truly good qualities? Well, you can take those qualities once you discover them and you can develop them. You can nurture those. And I think people see when they have a leader who sees a leader within themselves, within the people in the organization, that gives a certain power to the people in the organization. And when people feel that sense of power, they feel like they can contribute and it's recognized. And then, once they see that they themselves may have some leadership, you develop that trust. That trust is so fundamental. But again, unless you look for it, you don't find it, and therefore you don't create it. Well, I think by and large, there really is nothing new under the sun, even in leadership. So the main qualities that I mentioned or discussed earlier, honesty, sweat, and humility, have been true for leaders as far back as human beings go, and probably further than that. So good leadership and the qualities needed, no, they're not new under the sun. What is new under the sun, I think, are the conditions, especially today, the conditions that leaders are forced to exist in. Especially with the advent of social media, because the problem with social media is that it's at everybody's fingertip. Some people misuse it. You see that all the time. And when you have leaders who misuse social media and even lie to affect the conversation, to change the conversation, to try to give people that red herring, that kind of deceit that really is poisonous to an organization, that really erodes trust completely. Now, the funny thing is, a leader that lies, whether it's on social media or any place else, the people in the organization figure it out very quickly. That leader might be able to fool people outside the organization, but the people within it, the teammates, the people that report to that leader, they all know, and other leaders do. So I would say that the conditions and the circumstances, especially with social media as an example, really complicate good leadership. As a result, that inhibits good leadership, because then you have leaders that are afraid to be honest, that are afraid to tell the truth or what they perceive as the truth. So that puts the leader in a position of making sure, and we can discuss this more if you like, always tell your story. Because if you're not telling your story, I guarantee you someone else will be happy to do that for you, and it may not be the right story.